Hello, welcome to Code Live. Today we will continue learning about GraphQL API. This time we will see two new features. One feature that came on summer 23, which is aggregate queries, and a new feature that is currently in beta for winter 24, which is mutations. And since we are going to be covering something that is beta, that is not GA, let me show you the forward-looking statements. Remember that Salesforce is a publicly traded company and don't make any purchases on financial decisions on products that are not generally available to the public. And saying this, my name is Julian Duque. I'm a principal developer advocate here at Salesforce, and I'm super happy to joining you again on this Code Live. We will have Code Live this week, but next week we will have some sort of recess because there is something going on called Dreamforce. Next week is Dreamforce, the great party in Salesforce. All of our team is going to be in San Francisco doing sessions, activations, and hanging out with the developer community. So if you are going to attend Dreamforce, come say hi. I will be more than happy to have you in our Trailblazer Forest space when we will be hanging out with the Trailblazers. So let me show you some announcements. Remember that we have the Salesforce Developers website, developer.salesforce.com. Here you can find the latest news, latest content that we have created for you, videos, podcasts, blog posts, and of course, information about Dreamforce. And if for some reason you cannot travel or attend Dreamforce, you can also watch it. Go click on Salesforce Plus, go and check out the events. And here in events, you will be able to register for free to watch Dreamforce. So don't miss it. Dreamforce is going to be streamed on Salesforce Plus. Okay, let me do something here before we continue. Fantastic. Also, remember, we have the Salesforce Developers YouTube channel where you can see all of the videos that we publish, all of the live events. Recently, we had an AMA about Data Cloud and MuleSoft. We will be having a Dreamforce Decoded, like highlights after Dreamforce as well. We have another AMA about Lightning Web Components, more content from codeLive. So go ahead, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are not already, and make sure you watch our content. Perfect. So, what are we going to be covering today? We will be covering GraphQL API. GraphQL API is already GA, it's already generally available. You can use it on your org. You can find the documentation, and let me share a handy QR code that I have here. So you can scan the GraphQL API docs. Make sure to have this URL at hand because here you can find all of the information, how to get started with the GraphQL API, how to set up a client, how to perform queries, aggregations, mutations, and everything we are going to be covering today. And with GraphQL API, you will be able to use any GraphQL client from a front-end application built in any programming language or a mobile application or using a desktop client. This is what we are going to be using today to interact with Salesforce data. Currently, GA, you can query data as a read-only mode. You can only get information. But now, starting winter 24 release or API 59, you will be able to perform mutations. So what are mutations? Mutations is the write mode. You will be able to mutate data. This means you will be able to create, update, and delete records from the GraphQL API. And we will have some examples of these at the end of the stream. For this, we will be using a GraphQL client. So you can use, it is handy, of course, our Salesforce Developers Postman collection. If you go to Salesforce Platform APIs, you will find on the Salesforce Platform APIs folder, there is a GraphQL folder with some examples that you can use. You can connect using Postman, authorize to your org, and start querying data. This is a good alternative for you. But specifically for GraphQL, there is a recommended client that it's on the docs. If you go to get started and a quick start, you will see this link, which is connect Altair GraphQL client to Salesforce. So for today, we will be using the Altair GraphQL client. Altair, it's a handy desktop application that you can install on many operating systems. This is available on Mac, Linux. It can run on the browser. It's available on Windows as well. And it's great to interact with a GraphQL API. With this, you will be able to build the queries that you will then add to your application. A GraphQL query is performed using HTTP as a post request to a specific URL, and we will see that specific URL later. How can we construct that URL in our org? And basically, in the body of that HTTP request, we will send the GraphQL query, and we will get the result as a JSON object. And then we can operate and do something with that JSON object. This is why I'm telling you, you can do it with any programming language. We also support the GraphQL wide adapter for LWC. So there is already native support for LWC to perform GraphQL queries. You don't need to perform authentication. It will be already pre-authenticated to your org. It will use the Lightning Data Service to fetch data, to catch data as well. So if you are building a Lightning Web Components application, use the GraphQL wide adapter. It will be GA in winter 24 release. Right now is in beta. When it comes GA, it will not have mutation support. So you will be only able to read information, not write information using the wide adapter. But the team is obviously working on that. Let me take a look at the chat to see if there is any questions. Tech Lead is asking, does Rene and Christophe have any sessions in Dreamforce? I don't know. They were. I know at least Rene is going to be available in one of the activations. I am not sure Christophe has any sessions. He's on a high level, taking care that the show is running. Hello, Kumar. Thank you very much joining us on this codeLive, and I'm super happy to have folks with me right now. If you have any questions, feel free, drop your question in the chat, and I will be answering those as well. Okay, so we will need to have the Altair GraphQL client installed in our computer, and we will need to have a Salesforce org. You can have a developer edition org. Remember that if you want to try mutations, you will need to have a winter 24 release. So go ahead and register to a pre-release version on a trial if you want to try these features, or when winter 24 is ready, you can try mutations. But on a summer 23 org, you will be able to perform any query and the aggregate queries that I will be showing in this stream as well. So after you get the Altair GraphQL client installed on your computer, you will have something like this. This is a desktop application. In this desktop application, you will set up the URL in this field. You will write GraphQL queries in this side of the application, and you will get the response on the right side of the application. But I will teach you how to set up Altair so it is easier for you to have all the information from your org, like the instance URL, the access token, set up the headers. So you have a great development setup for GraphQL. So what do we need to do first is to authenticate against our org. So how can we authenticate against our org? Well, we will need to have an access token, and the best way to having an access token is by performing an OAuth authentication flow. So we will be using a OAuth user credentials flow to be able to get that access token. If you have not set up an OAuth user credentials flow, I will show you how. So let's start by creating a connected app. This connected app is going to have a specific scope that will allow me to access the API information. And when I have that, I will need a couple of details so I can get that access token. All of the information that you are going to be seeing here, you will see some secrets, like a consumer key and a consumer secret from an OAuth application are going to be part of a disposable org. So I will be rotating those after this session finalizes. So don't try to do anything funny, but follow along if you want to do it on your own. I have a question here. We given sessions on GraphQL API for operation type query, but I am so excited of hitting the operation type mutation. It is a future game changing. Yes, definitely. I really, really like that we are going to support mutations because now you can have the full life cycle of an application, reading and writing. Okay, let's set up a connected app that will allow me to log in to my Salesforce org to get an access token for my GraphQL API. So let me go to the org. I have an org here. This is a developer edition org using Winter 24. So the first thing that I need to do is go to the app manager. In the app manager, I will need to create a new connected app. And this new connected app, we will call it GraphQL Auth. We'll need a contact email. Perfect. Let me increase this a little bit so you see better what I'm doing. You can fill out the rest of the information. I'm just going to be adding the necessary information for this user credentials flow. Then I will need to enable the OAuth settings. So I enable the OAuth settings. I need to pass a callback URL, but we will not be using this. So it will be any URL. I am going to be passing localhost. It doesn't matter in this case. And I will need to add scopes. So remember, the more scopes you add, the more access you are doing to your users. So we will try to keep it light here. We will only give access to the API. So let's go ahead and search for the API. And this is the only scope we need to use the GraphQL API. And then here, this is the important part. Enable client credentials flow. So we will enable the client's credentials flow to make it easier for us to get an access token from the terminal or from Postman, depending of your choice. But remember that this might represent some security risks because you are giving full access to certain specific users. If a user have access to consumer key and consumer secret, they will have access to your full org. So be mindful about these things. But for these demo purposes and to create the queries that we will be using on our app, this works perfectly. So let's create here. Click on the enable client credentials flow. It is telling me what I said, anyone with the consumer key and consumer secret can access your org. So be mindful about that. And now I think I have everything. So on this screen, I have everything I need. I already set up my connected app. I will save. This will take some time until it pretty much configures the org and make it available with these new authentication credentials. So from here, we will have to do two things. One, get the consumer details. So we will need to get the consumer key and the consumer secret. So I have a document here hidden on another screen where I will be typing those. So make sure when you are doing this process, you type those credentials in a document so you can use them for the HTTP request that we are doing later to get the access token. So let me get manage consumer details. It will ask me for a verification code that it will arrive on my email. So I will be opening my email. And let's see if it arrives quick enough. Yes, I got it. Everything is live. This is why it's called codeLive. So let's hope everything works. And now here we have the two things we need, the consumer key and the consumer secret. So let's copy. I will paste it on my secret document, the consumer key and the consumer secret. And now I have the information that I need. Second, I will need to go and click on manage. I will need to manage the policies of that application. So here I will be editing the policies of my application. Remember that this is for demo purposes. When you are doing this on production, you are going to be mindful about all the security aspects that we are flexing. We are relaxing certain things on this app. So let me edit the policies. One thing we will make sure it is enabled. It is the all users myself authorize. So the user I'm going to be selecting on the client credentials flow is the one that is going to be authorizing against the org with the consumer key and the consumer secret. Also, I am going to relax the IP restriction so I can connect easily from my computer. You can, in production, you can set up like a specific IP ranges. So only certain devices or certain servers or computers can access to this API. But now I am relaxing the IP restriction so I can easily get the credentials. And last but not least, on the client credentials flow section, I will select the user that will be executing this API, which is my user. Let me save. And now I am ready to get the credential. I am ready to get the access token for my application. Cool. How can we do that? We can do that by doing a HTTP request, a post request to my org requesting the access token by passing the consumer key and the consumer secret and making sure that we are using the user's credential flow. How can we do that? Well, I'm going to use curl. This is a command line tool to perform HTTP requests, but you can use any HTTP request tool that you can use. You can use Postman, you can use any other that you might feel comfortable with. So I will perform the request to my org. So I need to have the URL of the org. This is my org. And the endpoint, it will be services slash OAuth 2 slash token. Then I will need to send the post parameters. The first post parameter that I'm going to be sending is the grant type equals client credentials. I am telling my OAuth flow that I'm going to be using the user credentials flow. Then I will need to send the client ID parameter. And the client ID parameter is the consumer key. And then I will need to send the client secret. I think it's called, yes, the client secret parameter. Client secret parameter. And I'm sending the one that application gave me. This should give me the access token if we did everything correct. Let me click. I am getting the access token, but it's hard to read, so I'm going to give you a tip. There is another application in the terminal. This is available for Linux, for Mac. I think it might be available for Windows as well. Yes, it is available for Windows as well, called JQ. JQ allow me to parse JSON output from any application, specifically from an HTTP request. So what can I do is pretty much execute the command, use the pipe operator. I'm getting the output from this command and sending it to the input of JQ, and then I will get a JSON object parsed. It's readable. It is better. And I can also use these to extract certain specific parts of my JSON. For example, with JQ, let me have it here, I can extract the access token, and it will give me only the access token. And I can use another command in Mac. I think in Linux is different, and in Windows, I don't know which one because I have not done this in Windows, but in Mac, it is PV copy. So basically, I am copying all that query result, all that access token into the clipboard. And I already have it on my clipboard, so I can paste it in my Altair. Okay, let's go to Altair. I have the access token. So the easiest way is to go and set the headers here. I can set the authorization, I can set the bidder, and paste the token. But what happens with this approach, it will work. It will work. It will let you perform the request on this window. If you create a new window or a new tab, you will lose this header. For example, I will save this header. This window have that access. If I create a new one and I get the headers, I don't have that property. So I will need to set it up every time, and that can be a little bit cumbersome. I don't want to do that, right? So let's do a better approach. Let's set up a development environment using Altair. So let's delete this header from the tab, and on here on the right, you see something that says no environment. So we will be creating an environment, okay? So let's go ahead, click on environments, add a new environment, and this environment is going to be called Salesforce org. This is my org. And I have a JSON, and here on my JSON, I can specify fields that later can be used as variables. For example, I have the access token, and this is the access token that I'm pasting here. And then I want to have the instance URL. So how can we get the instance URL of my org? It's also on this JSON. It's here, the instance URL. So let's copy and paste. Now I have the instance URL. So I have the two variables that I'm going to be using mostly on my Altair. And then from here, I can set up the headers. I'm setting up the headers for my specific environment. So here I can set up authorization, and the token is the access token. I am using this handlebars syntax here, and this will replace this variable with the content of this field that we have here in the JSON. And you can add more depending of your needs. You can add the API version, you can add any other information here for your environment. But this is the minimum information that I will need for my Altair environment that will help me perform HTTP GraphQL queries easily. So let's save this and select my environment. So now the variables are preset. First. Second, I will need to create an URL. So that URL, remember that we have the instance URL variable. I have the HTTPS there, so I will be deleting that HTTPS information. I don't need it from my environment. So let me edit this, delete it. Perfect. And now that I have that instance URL, I can go and do the services, data, the API, and then GraphQL, which is the endpoint for GraphQL. And also see that this is going to be a post request. So now what I have here is I set up my environment to connect to my org using GraphQL. How can we test this? By sending a query. Okay, let's construct our first query. So we will be seeing some basics. This is like a reminder of the GraphQL basics, and then we will be doing the most advanced stuff. We will be doing aggregate queries, we will be checking mutations, and we will be also, by a great recommendation by TechLead, there are like some GraphQL recipes on the LWC recipes project, and why we don't use those queries and run those queries here to see what happens. Okay, so let's create a query, list accounts. This name is any name. This is pretty much, I am naming my query, so I know what I'm doing, but you can use any name here. First, I will be performing the queries to the UI API. And you see, now that we are connected to the org, Altair is able to autocomplete the fields and properties because it uses something called introspection. It is able to read the full GraphQL schema of my org and autocomplete things. You also have access to docs. So if you click here, you can have access to documentation. Here you can see the documentation for queries and mutations. I click here to query. I have access to the UI API. I have access to query aggregate. So I can see how can I perform these different operations. And from here, let's say I have the account, and the account query can have these specific arguments, and it will return an account connection with an account edge. It will have the page information, etc. So this is very helpful for us to construct our queries when we don't know the schema or the shape of the objects that we are accessing with GraphQL. Let me visualize. Can we ignore sharing using GraphQL? Can you specify a little bit more about that? I think this is related to the security settings of the objects. I think it's depending of what what objects your user have access to, because I am connecting to this API through a specific user. In this case, I'm using the system administrator. But if you have a user that doesn't have like certain specific permissions, you will not be able to get fields or objects. Okay, so the UI API, now after the UI API, I'm going to be doing a query, and I will be doing a query to the account object. And from the account object, remember that I need to get the edges, and then from the edges, I get the node, and from the node, I get the account object, and from the account object, I can get a lot of information. So let me get the ID, I can get the name has a value, and let's say I'm getting the annual revenue, which has a value, and it has a display value as well. So I'm performing a query to the account object. I am getting different fields. With Altair, I can also click here on this suitcase, click on prettify, and it will prettify the query. Let's just ignore this warning, and let me send the request. And if everything is good, I am getting a result. If you see how fast it is, I got the result in 177 milliseconds. And here I have the list of the accounts. So I'm getting the sample account for entitlements, Edge Communications, which with its annual revenue, and the annual revenue have the two fields, the value and the display value, which is how it will be looking on the UI. And this is giving me always these GraphQL queries are going to give me or return just 10 items. This is why GraphQL supports pagination. We are using the relay specification, and the relay specification has a way to perform pagination of records. If we go to the documentation, if we go back to the account connection object, we can see a page info object here at the same level of edges. So here at the level of edges, I can get the page info object. And this page info object has certain parameters. Has next page, has previous page, start cursor, and end cursor. And I send the request, and let me hide the docs. I'm getting the information for that specific page, for that specific query. Also, I can pass the total count. It's another property that is available at the account level that is telling me the total amount of records that I am querying. So the page info is giving me information about pagination. I have a next page. Yes, I can fetch more records. I have a previous page. No, there is nothing before. The start cursor is going to be this ID, and the end cursor is going to be this other ID. I can also fetch the cursor, I think at the edges. Yeah, at the edges level, I can get the cursor information. So I can see each record has a specific cursor, so I can use these cursors to perform validation. To perform navigation. So now, if I want to go to the next page, I can say, okay, give me the first 10 elements after the specific cursor. And I'm giving the end cursor. It's going to be the cursor to perform the pagination. And now I'm getting the other objects. See? I'm getting the other objects that are on the next page. And here I have the previous page, but I don't have any next page. So this is a way to navigate using this specification, and the LWC recipes project has already some implementations with the UI that you can take a look at the code, how can be implemented and connected with an interface so you can navigate records. And let me take a look at this. I will hide the QR code because we don't need the QR code anymore. I guess you already have access to the docs. Perfect. Let me show you the GraphQL LWC recipes. So we have different examples here, how to fetch the contacts, how to pass variables to a specific query, how to use the GraphQL refresh function to refresh a specific query, how to perform the GraphQL pagination using that page info object, and how to fetch multiple objects within one query. I would recommend you to go to the LWC recipes project on Trailhead Apps on GitHub to take a look at the code, to take a look how this is implemented. For example, with GraphQL contacts, if you go to the code, I'm using the LWC wire adapter. And with the LWC wire adapter, I am passing a GraphQL query. And I can simply copy this query and paste it on Altair. I can create a new window. Remember that our windows are already set up with environment, so I don't need to set up the headers, and I am already getting the data. I'm getting the first 5 contacts, and I'm ordering those contacts by name in ascending order. And from that contact, I'm getting the ID, the name, the phone, and the title. And as you can see, I'm getting the information here. If I say, give me just the first 2, it will give me just 2 records. And this is a way of how can I filter out information. Or I can filter out information by passing for example, filter by name, where the name is equals to something or is like something. That can be done on, or that can be seen on the GraphQL variables recipe. For example, I want to filter by Ashley, and it's getting just Ashley James here. If I go to the code to that GraphQL variables, I'm going a little bit faster here because you already have access to the code. You can try it out with Altair. I'm showing you how can you test these queries without installing the LWC recipes, just using the Altair client. Let me see the GraphQL variables here. And let me pass this this query, search contacts, and a new window. Verify this, and I will show you how to create queries with variables. So here you can see I have a query called search contacts that requires or has 2 specific variables, 2 input variables. A search key, which is a string and is required, and a limit, which is an integer that has a default value, which is 5, and it is not required. So I'm querying the contact and I'm performing a filter. So where the name is like that search key that I'm passing. And the first is telling me the first amount of items that I'm going to be returning. This is similar to the limit in SQL, and order by name. If I execute this, nothing is going to happen because I have a validation error. It is telling me, hey, I am expecting a variable, but you are not passing variables to this. So how can you pass variables? If you see here at the bottom, there is a variables tab. You click on that tab, and now you can pass the variables as JSON. So let's say a search key, John. And now I think this is it. Perfect. Now I am passing the search key, and I'm getting the contacts that has the name like John, which are John Bond and John Smith. And this is how can I create also queries that receive input parameters as well with GraphQL. So I will invite you to go ahead and check the LWC recipes, take a look at the different implementations here, how the queries are being integrated with LWC, and go ahead and try it. Copy and paste this query on Altair and fetch data from your org. Now, let's talk about aggregate queries. Remember that with SQL, when you are fetching data, you can aggregate information. And by aggregating information, you will need to iterate over the aggregate result object to get that information. And you can do similar operations here with GraphQL. So in the documentation, there are a lot of great ways to perform aggregations. Go to Aggregate Queries Docs, and here you can see the different aggregations that you can perform. You can perform average, you can count, you can get the minimum or maximum from a number. You can perform aggregations also for different types. For example, aggregations on dates as well and time. You can perform aggregations on strings, on numbers. So go ahead and take a look at the documentation to see how can you perform these aggregation operations. Let's do an aggregation operation on Altair. So let me create a new query. And this query is aggregate annual revenue by industry. We are going to get the annual revenue from all of my accounts by industry. And I will want to have first, let's try to get the average, and then let's try to get the total, right? Why not? So remember, and we can go ahead to the docs. When I am performing a query, I have two different objects I can query on the UI API, the query and the aggregate. So let's do a query. In this case, let's hide the docs. We are going to perform a query to UI API. And instead of doing a query, we are going to do an aggregate. The query that I'm performing here can have access to aggregate operations. So I'm doing an aggregation over the account object. Okay. And over the account object, I have access to the edges. I have access to the node. And then I will aggregate. Let's do I think it's let me double check. I forgot how to do it. Okay, yes, I have the node. I will aggregate. Then I need to get the field. In this case, let's get industry. So I'm doing an aggregation over industry. And then I need to pass the operation. So the operation in this case, let's zoom. Yeah, let's zoom all the value. So I am adding all of the values of my industries of my account. So I will need to get a large number here. It fails some is undefined. It is not some. Maybe I forgot the operation. Let me see. Aggregate the schema. What is the operation name? It is sum. It is sum on a currency aggregation. And it is not industry. It is on annual revenue. Obviously, it's going to fail because industry is a string and I cannot sum strings. It is the sum is an operation that it's only available on currency. So it needs to be done on a currency type, which is the annual revenue. And now I am getting the value. Now, if I pass the display value, I have like a very large number, and this is pretty much the sum of all of the annual revenue by all of my accounts. But remember that I want to group these by industry. So I need to perform a grouping operation. So let's do that grouping operation over the account object. So here I'm going to be grouping by industry. Now I can perform the grouping, and let me say that, yes, I will group the values by industry. If I send the request, now you can see that I am getting different values. Now they are grouped, but I don't know the industry. So now that I have access to the node, sorry, to the aggregate, I can get the industry and I can get the value. And now I can see, okay, this industry is null. So let's filter the nulls. I don't want to have nulls. So where? Not here. It's here. Let me remove those nulls. Where industry is not equals to null. Okay, so I filter out the null information and I'm grouping by industry. So now I am getting what I wanted. I am getting the value of annual revenue by different industries. I have apparel, which is 350. I have biotechnology with 30, construction with is 950, etc. And I can also get the average. It will get the average per industry, or I can perform other operations that are available on my currency aggregate type or other type. So basically, that's how can I perform an aggregation using GraphQL. So depending on what you want to aggregate, go ahead and take a look of how can you do this. You can aggregate by counting the items. You can aggregate by time. You can aggregate by currency, and everything needs to start with this aggregate query here. So that's the main difference. You can also mix and match. Here I'm doing an aggregation, and let's say here I can do a query. So I can perform a query, and this query here, it will be of a contact, edges, node, ID. I think I can perform this too without a problem. It's without these two columns, okay? Perfect. So here I am mixing one query and one aggregation. So if you see the result, I'm getting first the query, I'm getting the information of the contacts, and then I'm getting the aggregation, which is the accounts. So I am querying two different objects with two different parameters at the same time, and this is going to be more performant because you don't need to perform multiple requests to your API. So that's one of the strong features of GraphQL, is that you will be able to query multiple objects at the same time. And here you are also mixing and matching aggregations and queries on just one request. Okay, let's continue with mutation. Now, with mutations, what we want to do is create, update, or delete objects in my org. So let's see how can we perform a creation. Let's store a new account. We have 13 accounts right now, so let's add a new one. Okay, let me check the docs for mutation. I have mutations on the UI API. Remember that this is beta. So I have mutations on the UI API, and I can perform different operations. For example, account create, account update, account delete, etc. So we have record create, record update, record delete. So we are going to perform a record create with account. So let's go ahead. Now we don't start with query, we start with mutation. And this mutation is going to be called create an account. Start with the UI API, because that's the API that this is exposing. And then we are using the account create operation. And the account create operation will receive a account, right? Sorry, the account create operation will need a parameter, and that parameter is going to be an account. And the account will have a name, and the name is going to be codeLive. I will need to add a, what else? Can we add annual revenue for our account? Yes. And can we add an industry? And this industry, let's say we have apparel, and this needs to be with double quotes. Okay, I'm passing the input, and then I need to get an output. So this output is going to be a record, and this record is going to give me the ID, for example. Let's say the name. I'm trying to create an account with these three properties: the annual revenue, the industry, and the name, and I will get the ID and the name. Let's send the request, and I have a validation error. Validation error of type sub-selection. Oh, because I need to select the name. Give me a value. Okay, now I created an account. It is telling me, okay, this is successful. I created an account. This is the ID of that new account. So I can go ahead and create a new query and get that account. Query, we can call it account by ID. And this is UI API. This is query. This is account where ID equals this. And from here, I have the edges, the node, the ID, and the name, the annual revenue, and the industry. And let's see if we got it right. Because I need to get the value, of course, and I need to get the value of these, because these are complex types. And now we can see that we created codeLive with the annual revenue 8,000 and the apparel industry. If we go ahead and query the aggregate revenue by industry and change that, instead of average, let's say sum, Here on industry, we need to get an extra 8,000. I can pass a maximum value. One is the most expensive one, 350. And I can pass a minimum value, which one has the minimum annual revenue, 8,000, which is the account we just created with this mutation. We can also update the record or delete the record. Let's delete the record with a account delete. So we need to pass a mutation, delete account, and remember UI API. And now this is the object is account delete, and it will need to receive the input. And in this case, the input is an ID. And we have the ID that we want to delete. Let's confirm that the ID it has been deleted. The account delete only returns an ID. It says account deleted. If I get the account by ID, now it doesn't return, so we delete it. And the same is going to be with update. With update, we will need to update our record. So let's create, again, codeLive. We can create codeLive again. Now we have a new codeLive. Let's copy this ID and let's update. Mutation, update account. And remember, again, we are using the UI API. Now it is account update. The input is what fields we will be updating. So on the account object, what I want to update, annual revenue. Let's get them 100,000, right? And now specify the ID. This is the ID that I am updating. And what I am getting in return, I always need to get something in return. Well, show me if this was successful or not. And it is telling me that the update was successful. And if I query by the ID, now it is telling me codeLive, it is 100,000. And if do the aggregation, now it is at 100,000. And everything worked. So we cover how to set up the application using a connected app. Remember, you will need a connected app to do the client credentials flow to get an access token. Then we learn how to set up Altair client as a development environment by setting up an environment with variables with the access token and the instance URL. We remember how to perform queries with GraphQL. And one great tip is go ahead, take a look at the LWC recipes, copy and paste those queries so you can make sure that everything is working. We saw how to perform aggregations and also how to perform mutations. Remember that next week we will not have codeLive. Next week is Dreamforce week, so we will be offline, but go ahead, tune in on Salesforce Plus, take a look at the keynotes, specifically the developer keynote, which is going to be amazing, packed with a lot of new features and great stuff for you all developers. And if you manage to attend Dreamforce, come say hi. I will be hanging out at the Trailblazer Forest in the Developer Grove, and also our team is going to be around the Platform Park, Customer 360 area, Community Code, etc. Thank you very much for joining me on this codeLive, and as always, see you on the next one. Bye bye.